Thank you, George. I appreciate it. And thanks everybody for carving some time out of your schedule to join us. I hope it's useful. So the Jacobsen is a 150 plus year old price reporting agency, along with a full portfolio of other ag commodities we report on. We started reporting on hemp in July of last year. Um, when we started reporting pricing on hemp, we were reporting historical pricing that was uh, based on prohibition. So the numbers leading up into the planting of 2019 were historical numbers. They really didn't have any foundation in what the supply and demand picture was. And of course, uh, as the season went along, in July, prices um, started to collapse. Really, a price correction, if we can call that a correction in an industry that's new. But prices adjusted to a much lower level based on the perception of oversupply midsummer, and and also processors were uh, collecting large inventories of derivatives, and I think that started to cause some alarm, and we started to see fire sales and things. The pricing picture shifted immensely. Um, so as planting continued, we saw state acreage post at over 500,000 acres for permitted acreage. Um, and and as you can see on this tree map here, this is actual acreage reported by Farm Service Agency in the middle of the summer. And this acreage from Farm Service Agency is a little bit skewed. For instance, Oregon shows up with less than 8,000 acres per FSA, but probably Jackson County had nearly 8,000 acres in southern Oregon last year. So much of this acreage wasn't reported because producers there either new farmers or were cannabis producers, and they don't have any relationship with FSA or FSA programs. So this acreage was not reported here. In states like Montana, where producers do have historical ties with FSA programs, and a lot of these hemp seed producers are also pulse or wheat producers, then we see more acreage registered there. But again, this is not a full picture of acreage. So, um, so anyway, the daily hemp bulletin that we publish every day is more of a near-term outlook on pricing and other issues affecting the industry. The the market intelligence reports that we are publishing now monthly, and what the survey is to support, is more of a long-term outlook on the hemp industry. So these are two different products with different perspectives, and the full market intelligence report later in May will be available for tier one subscribers. But we really appreciate all the input from survey participants, and this is what we're returning to you for your time and investing this. So we hope that it's useful. We were fortunate to have over 400 people respond to our survey, and this survey, including another one that will come in the summer, in July after planting, and then another in the fall, will round out our yearly production surveys, and we'll also do a processor surveys. All these surveys, in addition to our comprehensive balance sheets for supply and demand and analyst insights, come in to inform our market intelligence reports. So as far as hemp acreage in 2020, also, just to backtrack, for 2020, FSA will be recording acreage. It's compulsory as part of the IFR that was released in October. So we should get a better and more accurate picture of acreage this year. In addition, they're going to be recording whether the purpose is for fiber, grain, seed, or cannabinoids. So this will be extremely helpful data. as our forecasting begins here, our market outlooks begin, they're limited based on the data that's available to us. And we do have our surveys and our balance sheets, but more comprehensive data from the feds and states are going to be extremely useful for everyone in this industry. So moving forward for 2020, what we forecast is 100. So last year, 146,780. This coming year, we forecast 157,082 acres. And more than half of this acreage, survey respondents listed as organic. Now, we realize that not all of this acreage is certified organic, but because of the status of hemp and the limited number of agrochemicals available, it is part of the reason why so much hemp is managed organically. We realize that not all of this is certified organic, but this is the response that we got from surveys. And an organic segment is emerging rapidly, though. It's one of the strategies that producers are using to differentiate their product in the marketplace. So we're seeing that supply chain develop and extraction operations that are certified to produce certified organic extract. So that trend has grown and will continue to grow. As fiber hemp is scaled up, this ratio will probably change. Firstly, because fiber acreage will consume more acreage, but also for the markets, it won't be as imperative for this product to be organic. For the cannabinoid market, organic is going to be a growing trend because it's very sensible for these products going as dietary supplements and concerns with bioaccumulation for these products to be produced organically. So as far as the breakdown of the crop in 2020, survey respondents showed that just over 6% was for fiber and grain. Cannabinoids is the bulk of the crop planted this year. Just less than 15% is cannabigerol or CBG. We did not take survey data on any other minor cannabinoids, but CBG is really the predominant minor cannabinoid that will be planted this year. Producers are really just continuing to trial varieties. That's both in CBD, CBG, and fiber and grain. But CBG in particular are newer genetics. One of the biggest benefits being the low THC that's typical for CBG and THC compliance with new standards set out in the IFR or individual states, testing to a total THC standard and not rounding. So farmers are actively trying grain and fiber varieties also, generally on smaller acreage and in areas where there's no existing markets. But with hemp seed in particular, there's good theoretical global demand. Hemp seed oil has a lot of uses, and so we should see this steadily grow over the coming years. Montana, Minnesota, North Dakota, these are the key hemp seed grain production states in the Northern Plains. Our pricing is listed from Northern Plains. Montana recently instituted a checkoff. Checkoff programs are programs where producers are assessed a small portion of their output, say 1% on yields or revenues. And so this program should be very helpful in promoting hemp seed products, both domestically and globally. The scope of that program and what segments of hemp that they'll promote is unknown, but certainly in Montana, hemp seed grain is one of the predominant crops there. Fiber demand is limited still, but projects are underway. One recent project with former Canopy Growth alums, where were funded in their IPO over $150 million, and Panda Biotech in Texas is investing a great deal of money in new decortication technology, but it'll take some time for this to materialize. So this is the breakdown of the upcoming crop for 2020. Moving on to crop insurance. So most producers, as you can see here, have no crop insurance. Just 20% have any kind of, or less than 20% have any crop insurance at all this year. Growers utilized private insurance in 2019 and will continue to this year. At least one claim was filed in Central Oregon last year in response to a hailstorm. But the major obstacle for producers in the federal crop insurance program is a marketing contract. The deadline for this has already passed. It was in February. Very few people had marketing contracts in place, and so this is a major barrier. So that, and also the fact that the crop insurance program does not cover hot hemp, hemp that's exceeded allowable THC levels. This is another obstacle for people. But generally, producers that take advantage of the federal crop insurance program have larger acreage. They are generally involved in other they have diversified operations, so they probably already have a relationship with the federal program. And of course, like in Montana, where a lot of those producers are already producing pulses and wheat, they're well acquainted with this program. So in general, crop insurance is not something that's being utilized by the majority of hemp producers this year. So other survey averages that we encountered, to sum up some of our findings here, on average, producers intend to test their crop twice in the coming season. Some producers are testing in-house. Larger producers have HPLC equipment in-house. We believe that's the reason that we received the results for hot hemp show that well over a quarter of respondents had hot hemp last year. We're not really sure if that is related to in-house testing, whether cherry picking flowers, or if these were official tests that acreage was destroyed. So we're not really sure. On average, though, less than half, or 0.6867 acres per respondent were destroyed in 2019. As far as yields go, the average yields for CBD last year per respondents were just over 1,500 pounds per acre. CBG somewhat less, at just over 1,100 pounds per acre, and grain at over 1,250 pounds per acre. Just a quick discussion on yields. We think that the 1519 number is probably a little bit high for the national number. In mature areas like in Oregon and Colorado, and other states too, producers, it's not uncommon for them to achieve over 3,000 pounds per acre of yield for CBD. But that's not the reality for many new areas. Many of the new areas, producers saw as little as 300 pounds per acre, but 600 to 700 pounds was very common. The other issue with yields recording is farmers, and I was one for decades, are notoriously report yields on the higher side. And actual yields and marketable as we survey stocks are really dried product that's suitable for processing. So we think that these numbers, as we are able to track them more closely as time goes by, will be reduced. We think that number nationally is probably closer to about 1,200 pounds per acre. Yield grains are right in line with what we know about current genetic potential with grain varieties. We know that 3,000 pounds per acre is achievable, though few are hitting that mark, and most are probably around the 800 to 1,200 pound mark, but clearly some are exceeding that. So that covers the yields, and that is in broad brush our findings through our survey that I've quickly gone through. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open this up to any questions that that participants may have, and then cover any other details that I've missed. So,
all right, you guys can keep the questions coming. Thanks, Chase. The first question we have is, do we have any information on certified organic?
So the information that we have on certified organic is based on survey responses. We also, in our forecasting, we look at USDA certified organic numbers for people that list hemp as a crop. So we factor this in as part of our data as we look to certified organic numbers. But the numbers we presented in the chart here are what our survey respondents presented.
Okay. Is crop insurance covering germination issues?
That's a good question. Specifically germination issues, that's a great question because cannabis seed is notoriously has poor germination numbers. Obviously, the horror stories of people that germinated 25% and the ensuing litigation. But in general, 85% is a really good yield. Germination rate. But crop insurance will be limited this year, and if part of the issue is germination, then I suspect that they will cover this as long as it falls to the terms of crop insurance. But that's something that you're going to want to talk to your insurance agent about.
Chase, what are checkoff funds used in the states that we covered?
So checkoff funds are programs used for a variety of commodities. Some of the most popular ones that you might have heard of are the Got Milk campaign for the milk industry, pork, the other white meat, pistachios have done. A lot of the major commodities have checkoff funds where producers voluntarily give to these funds. The funds are used for marketing and for research. Both of these things and for education. All of these things are really important in the hemp industry right now. Montana's leadership there, I think, is going to pay off dividends going forward.
All right. Chase, are you tracking any seed varieties planted and pricing?
We don't. In general, we look at this, personally, just to keep track and to stay abreast of the movements in the industry. But in all of our commodities, we don't really track input pricing. The hemp seed segment in particular is unruly and growing very quickly right now. We'll see that settle down over the next coming years as people find success with particular varieties, but it still remains there's a lot of growth in this area. It's very lucrative, but it's lacking a great deal of stability in breeding. This takes a long time to achieve stability. There's very little certified seed out there available. State programs are beginning to certify seed, and they already have a good existing seed certification programs. But so much hemp seed is traded online, et cetera, that in 2020 we'll still see a lot of problems with seed, either with feminization rates or germination rates.
Okay. Chase, what was the ballpark price of organic grain in 2019-2020 versus expectation for 2021?
So organic grain prices have been very steady in the $1.10 to $1.20 range, $1.15 to $1.20. Those prices have been very stable. We expect those prices to be fairly consistent in 2020 for what we're seeing now. As we move into quarter three and we're working on the 2019 crop, states like Montana did have the early snowstorm that affected their yields to some extent. Canada has plenty of grain in storage. How much that will impact the picture is unclear. There's a major preference for domestic hemp seed for all buyers in the United States are really working to, sorry about that.
The joys of working at home.
Yeah. Great. Where was I though? Sorry. Did I cover that?
I think you did.
Great.
Chase, get into another question here. This is a multi-part question, I would say. How many pounds of hemp are needed for both CBG and CBD in the U.S. to satisfy domestic demand? And are we looking at another year of massive oversupply? Are you tracking the carryover stocks from the 2019 crop?
Yes, we are tracking the carryover from 2019 crop. And there's a significant amount of biomass still in storage. The major issue there is quality. Biomass harvested in October will not be the same in the market now or as we go into the third quarter. So that'll change the picture a lot in terms of pricing for biomass. People with well-stored biomass should have a competitive edge in the market. But absolutely, we are moving towards another oversupply picture. The demand picture is what is extremely unclear right now. Obviously, this is pivotal. The FDA regulations are pivotal in impacting the demand picture. But we also see other things picking up. States developing CBD beverages. One of the things that we thought would drive isolate demand in the United States. So Colorado, Florida, Virginia, and other states are moving to, they've allowed these products in food and beverage. So this should impact the market. They'll certainly be limited with their ability to sell on a national scale, but it should move the needle in terms of demand. So we are tracking those stocks. Again, the caveat being that 100,000 pounds of biomass here is not equal to 100,000 pounds there. And that'll be the differentiator going forward is quality. It's also one of the great challenges in moving biomass across the country. Really, when you look at the economics, shipping a load of biomass across the country fits in terms of the cost and profitability, but the inability to evaluate the product has really inhibited that market.
Thanks, Chase. Another question here. This one's on the yield numbers. Are they based on the farmer's sample of oil in biomass rather than survey from oil extraction plants?
So the yield numbers are actually poundage of actual biomass, dried biomass. Again, this is another area that's not standardized. We presume that this is all around the 10% range or below. But in general, there's a great deal of standardization needed in terms of metrics in the hemp industry. A lot of this with producers, new producers, it's challenging. Hemp harvest was chaotic last year. I think producers were happy to get what they had out of the field. But accurate yield numbers are still wanting. So as we go forward, we'll look to have more yield. But those numbers are not related to extraction yields. Those are just raw biomass yields and storage.
All right. Chase, do we have any information on what percentage of the 2019 hemp crop went unsold, product that wasn't harvested, as well as product that was harvested but left in the field and not sold?
We do have some information on that. We haven't presented that data yet. That will be in our full May market intelligence report. But in general, what we're seeing is that in some areas, as much as half of the crop went unharvested, Southern Oregon in particular. In that area, they saw just enormous amounts of material planted, and that's where we saw one of the most critical bottlenecks in terms of harvest and storage. It's different in different areas. Southern Oregon doesn't quite have the same infrastructure, say Pennsylvania, where there are barns everywhere. But producers, more than half producers, have all of their biomass from 2019 still in storage.
Okay. Any projections on the amount of the 2019 crop biomass that is still in storage pending an uptick in pricing?
Right. So I think that goes right along with what we're seeing there. So a lot of that biomass in storage is for people that passed on the 75 cents or 60 cents or even $1 per point. I think many people were banking on, I commented on this back at harvest time that producers could see a pricing increase later in the season if they're able to store product, because in areas with drier climate, it's very an advantage to areas, say here in the humid Southeast, for storing product. So absolutely, plenty of people were hedging and trying to, hoping for better pricing later in the season. And I think that some of those people will on a case by case and completely dependent on marketing and other factors, see some strengthening in prices.
Okay. A couple more questions for you, Chase. They just keep rolling in.
Good.
How fast is this shift moving from horticulture methods to ag methods? And what impact are folks seeing on the yield of CBD concentration?
That's a good question. I like that question. We don't have any statistics on that. We know that just like people are trialing seed, other producers, particularly larger producers in the fiber and grain segment, obviously are moving towards direct seeding. Our surveys did show that there is many producers are combining direct seeding with transplants. But this can only, in terms of profitability, this can only shift more towards direct seed over time. But this is going to be a slow process. It's based on seed quality for one. I mean, one of the issues in the seed segment is that seed handling is key. You run it through planters, and if they're maladjusted, then you break the seed coat, affect germination rates, and the same on the back end there with harvesting and processing or handling hemp seed grain in general. No solid numbers there, but absolutely, as time goes by, we'll see that shift. As that shift happens, we'll see cannabinoid levels go down. The ability to glean grain, fiber, and cannabinoids from a crop is very attractive. It's not that practical right now with current breeding. Genetics that are selected for hemp seed production may have some value, particularly with hurd or non-wovens, but high quality bast fiber needs to be harvested at a particular time, which is before seed set. So a lot of these things aren't quite compatible, but typically all of them can leave some residual that can be extracted for CBD. And as time goes by at scale, that economics should support the 2 and 3 and 4% CBD contents in those crops.
Chase, we got about 3 more minutes to answer a few more questions, so I'm going to just go from the top of the list. Do we have any data on how farmers dried or plan to dry their hemp this year?
We do not. Anecdotally, we know that drying systems are a major headache. Talked to one person last week that had a fire, destroyed their machine, but this isn't unique to hemp. I've seen soybean dryers burn down, which is terrifying because it's all of the oil content. But we don't have any hard, fast numbers on that. But for terpene quality and some of these higher value, particularly for high-end flour, these producers are hang drying and curing. But the mechanical drying has a long way to go.
All right, Chase, we got 2 more questions. One of them is a little outside the survey, but do you have any information regarding pre-emergent herbicides to spray before planting?
No data to support pre-emergence in hemp. I would check with your local extension agency and get some advice there. But in general, the pre-emergent herbicides are limited to larger producers that are producing at scale.
Okay. Any optimism on pricing heading back up given the lower amount of applicants getting hemp licensing than expected, as well as farmers holding off planting altogether until a buyer is identified?
Yeah, so the policy piece is really key here. Obviously, the FDA's position, but besides that, things are still happening. There are still deals happening. It's a very diverse industry with deals happening at different levels. So some people should see a strengthening in price and demand in the coming year, but this is going to be extremely dependent on relationships and marketing and quality and basic business practices. But I think there is some optimism for prices to grow, but overall, the historical pricing that we saw is not something that we're likely to see again.
All right, and our last question, can't really wrap up any call without mentioning it. How is COVID impacting planning?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think people that were on the fence that weren't really sure if they were going to plan or weren't when this came along, I think that either pushed them to get in gear and get fields prepared and get inputs ready, or to skip it. So we think that it probably um, did provide some impetus for people to move, but we do think that it probably is creating just another barrier for people that already we're looking at a lot of obstacles for this year. But we're still looking at similar acreages planted this year. Some of that will be an increase in grain. And really the most important thing is what happens at harvest. Last year, if perhaps 200,000 acres were actually planted, half of that or less were actually harvested.
Okay. Well, Chase, thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge and answering the questions. And for all the attendees on the call, following this webinar, I'm going to post a recording of this call along with a PDF of the results that Chase has put together. So you'll be receiving that here probably in the next hour. If you have any other questions, you can always email us. You can email Chase at chase.hubbard@thejacobsen.com, or you can just respond to the email that I send you after this call. So thank you all. We appreciate your time and questions.